Okay, remember that they're changing my voice. So I'm going to run out of memory on my phone soon. I covered a lot of stuff. Unfortunately, there wasn't too many people out here. It's Sunday in Gilroy, California. It's like, I don't think it's like 12:30 or something. And so, I left off talking about what they needed to do to be right with God, right? They needed to purge their hearts, their souls, their mind, their being. And they needed to purge it with the spirit of focused moral intensity, right? It's a potent purging of their soul that's needed. So what did they do instead? Okay. However, they are so sissy they just play games like the governing class and gang stalkers instead of manning up and obeying. If they do not obey and believe in me, they will die in their sins. He goes on to say that they will exalt him when they crucify him. Remember, this is what happened already. This overkill is why he has much to say in judgment of them. God sent him to judge them in God's spirit. I speak what God has taught me, and your own book, when interpreted correctly, says so. I will always do what pleases God, and many people believe me to some degree. Going to the verses 31 to 40. Jesus says that only people who live by his teaching are his followers. Also, only those who obey the commands of God are set free. Everyone else is a slave to sin. That cheats them, they're cheating me out of my right to lead, so they're a slave to the sin of cheating me out of my right to lead. So, when it says all who sin are slaves to sin, it's not saying that faith saves you, right? It says if you don't repent, you too will perish. It says be perfect like your heavenly Father is perfect. It says unless your righteousness surpasses that of the Pharisees, you won't enter the kingdom of heaven. So you have to scramble to be righteous, to scramble to be just. Okay, he says that they will exalt him when they crucify him. Okay, so he says that they will exalt him when they crucify him, just like they're exalting me when they persecute me and they target me, because I'm doing God's work. I'm standing 10 toes down as a man. They're merely conforming to some groups in society, revving their engines, doing it in a certain pattern, right? How come this didn't happen so much when I was in Santa Cruz or San Jose, right? Because they're targeting me. And just like we see in John 8, where Christ is a character in the story, says you will elevate him. They're going to elevate him when they crucify him. They're elevating me and exalting me by persecuting me. Why are they persecuting me? Because I'm doing what's right, and they're afraid to do what's right. The word coward is a play on words for a crowd, like a group, like a gang, right? Gang stalking, not necessarily criminal gangs, but any grouping of people that refuses to do the work of God, right? They're scared to do the work of God. It's easy to be a corporate person. It's easy to be a cop. It's easy to be in the military. It's easy to be a gang member. It's easy to be from any group, emo, jock, goth, K-pop, whatever the hell it is, right? It's difficult to stand on your own 10 toes as a man. It's difficult. The most difficult thing to do successfully is what I've done in my life, is to make the top martial artist challenge. $60,000 if I'm not compensated. Pay nothing if they lose $50 or $50 to show. I'll have to double check on that. It's $40 or $50. And $100 million if I'm compensated. That's how sure I am. Even if my compensation after taxes is just $100 million, I know for sure that I'm the top martial artist ever allowed to recover. They don't have a chance. For example, a golden retriever doesn't have a chance against a leopard. Okay, not a chance in the world. Would that leopard be crazy or gambling if he was willing to prove that he's better and glorify God at the same time by putting the $100 million on the line? Neither am I arrogant or some kind of gambler when I put my money where my mouth is. $100 million if they can beat me at sparring outdoors, which proves mind, body, soul, and spirit. But they can't do it. And that's if I'm compensated. And it shouldn't be very hard for them to do it. For example, we look at these different martial arts schools, karate, taekwondo, kung fu. They have literally millions of students and followers and practitioners, millions. If just a handful of them got together and wanted to expose what's going on here, they could do it. So they've disgraced their systems when they don't. They've disgraced their families when they don't. They disgrace their peoples and nations when they don't. Whatever it may apply to, that's what they've disgraced. There's no other way to look at it. They should have secured me my rightful place a long time ago. They should have exposed this a long time ago. And when they failed to do so, with all their heart, and they fail to obey God through me with all their heart, their disgrace and their failure will be complete. And my victory will be complete in that way instead of in a different way. And is this what I want for them? I didn't come into this world hating them with all my heart or something. I wanted them to do the right thing. But first and foremost, I'm here to do God's work. And as fate would have it, because of their rebellion, their cheating, their persecution, the divine verdict is that after my flesh dies, nobody will be right with God. Because we have to consider tech. The word tech is a play on words for cheat. We have to consider tech, cheating, breeding, and generational ill-gotten gains. Generational ill-gotten gains. Sometimes there's like 5, 6 generations alive at the same time. So why wouldn't generational ill-gotten gain matter? What does it say about your family when there's 3, 4, 5 generations of you alive at the same time, and all of you are not obeying God through me, and those of you who do not know would not obey God through me if they did know what was going on? What does that say about it? And those are rebels. Those are people who don't put righteousness first. Back in the days of the wars against the Philistines, people lived like a homeless person back in those days. They didn't have air conditioning. They didn't have iPhones and computers and TVs and cars. They were living like a homeless person. Can you imagine what they would say if someone said, hey, they don't want to risk going homeless, so they're going to betray God? They would think that's some punk stuff, folks. They would think that is some bitch-made stuff. That's outrageous. The book was made during a time when people quite often lived like a homeless person, but with less food kind of thing. Yeah, like that. Without the fancy jackets and so on and so forth. But people would then turn around and say, hey, because they don't want to risk having to live like they lived during the time of Christ, that they're not going to obey God. That is no excuse whatsoever. That's called being a coward. The word coward is a play on words for a crowd. And a crow-d, right? The crow, the walking dead. The refusal to give me my rightful place. Marshall is marital scrambled, and I, Christ, am the bridegroom. And the bridegroom is a play on words for bridge room. Okay. So, maybe I have to go back to this part real quickly here. Let's just reread this and we'll wrap this up here. Jesus says only people who live by his teachings are his followers. Also, only those who obey the commands of God are set free. Everyone else is a slave to sin, especially if they cheat me out of my right to lead. They must rally to me and obey God through me. He goes on to say that if the Christ in reality sets them free, they are free. While people who are slaves to sin, especially the sin of cheating me out of my right to lead again, have no place in God's family. He tells them that they are looking for a way to kill his body and soul, as they are illegitimate children of Abraham who reject what Christ has seen in God's presence and who have no room for God's Spirit in their hearts. That's what is meant by the word. Okay, now again, this is to whom it may apply. You hear people making the absurd argument that it's anti-Semitic to say this part. Okay? This part applies to everybody on this planet except for my parents and I, right? They are not truly the children of God. They're the children of the devil, right? Because their inclinations, okay? For example, God made the snake what it is. When all was said and done, its destiny was to be a snake. People who aren't destined to obey God through me are handed over to the devil for something that they did, for something that their ancestor did, for having in common with their ancestors that inclination to become what you might describe as a human snake. To snake somebody means to cheat, right? The ancient serpent, the devil. And to cheat me out of my right to lead is outrageous. The word cheat is a play on words for see, he at, and he cat, and see heat. So they see me at looking, thrown off, what have you, because they fume me and they poison me and they do things to my clothes. I got plenty of money to buy new clothes, but they make it so that when I buy them, I have problems, right? I have trouble walking and trouble, stiff muscles, and my back starts acting up because they do something funny to the clothes no matter how many times I wash them. And so when I get some new clothes or something, it has to be certain types. I have to wash it like 30 times, okay? And some clothes, no matter how many times I wash them, they mess me up, right? And that's military grade psyop activity that is causing that to occur. Okay. And of course, are they respecting my constitutional rights? No, they're not staying true to what they said on paper. Like Martin Luther King said, they're rejecting giving me my constitutional rights, my human rights, my civil rights, okay? And they're rejecting it just so they can play a sick game of harass me because I'm righteous and they're wicked and things of that nature. Okay. So he says that if they were Abraham's true and legitimate descendants, then they would be holy and do the types of things that Abraham did. No one is doing the types of things that Abraham did but me. And I am greater than Abraham, as I'm the top martial artist ever possible, and Abraham was not that. He reiterates that they are looking for a way to kill him and that he is saying what God told him. And so it is right now, where the government is working the angles on how to kill me. Eventually, what the government has done will eventually cause my death. Okay, so just like Christ is a character in the story, they're working the angles, the fallen angles, right? Angels is a play on words for angles. They're working the angles of evil and the principles of evil to kill me in a certain way over time with the poisoning and the fuming and the harassment and the persecution and the stalking and what have you. Okay. And of course, I proudly die for God. I proudly die for what I believe. I'm a warrior, not some punk who's afraid to live like the Jews did 2,000 years ago, and lose the modern comforts that they have, which aren't really that important. Okay. Wait till this guy goes by. Okay, you know what? Let's just save the last section of 41 through 50 for later. It starts off by saying he tells them that they are doing the works of their father, and he means the devil. They say that they're not illegitimate children, and the only father they have is God himself. Jesus said that if God was their father, they would love him in reality in a deep and logical way, right? So if God was the father of the churches and the mosques and the synagogues and every group out there, right? If God was their father, or if their father was a decent father that respected the martial art principles in reality, then they would love me, right? They would gravitate to me. They would rally to me instead of being in the groups that they're in, which are cheating me out of my right to lead, and they're clearly sinners, right? They're clearly people that merely conform to American culture, and everyone knows American culture is sin. If anyone thinks that's not the case, I'll debate you anytime. But let's start with, why is Las Vegas called Sin City? Why is New York City, as important as it is to the United States of America, why is New York City called the Rotten Apple? Why is Baltimore called Murdermore? So you got Murdermore, you got the Rotten Apple, and you got Sin City. But you don't think that your culture is evil? Okay? You testified against yourselves 1,000,000 times over. By the rate of homelessness in this country, by the rate of suicides, and the rate of people dying without access to health care, with trillions of dollars, among the rich. And they won't cut the check for $100 billion to end homelessness. Okay, you build 1 million units all across America, $100,000 a unit, land purchases included, what have you. They won't cut the check. Donald Trump added $8.4 trillion to the debt, but he won't cut the check for $100 billion. What's $100 billion? That would just be 8.5 instead of 8.4. So why didn't he just cut the check? He was willing to spend all that money on bombs that kill people for unjust wars, so America can pretend that it's bad. But he's not willing to end homelessness. He's not willing to feed the poor. He's not willing to work the angles to reform the healthcare system and come up with a cost-effective way to help people out. He's not willing to order people to stop persecuting me when I'm the son of a humanitarian and I've proven that I'm the top martial artist ever. And how petty is that? He's not willing to build affordable housing and to pass a logical tax plan. After he gave the tax cuts to the rich, okay, those $2 trillion in tax cuts. You gave $2 trillion in tax cuts to the rich, but you couldn't give $100 billion to the homeless to build houses. You couldn't start farming programs and reinforce the existing farming infrastructure, okay, and deliver food to the families that are hungry without needing to go to the store with food stamps, which is ineffective. It's not so cost effective. So they won't come up, with MIT and Georgetown and Yale, okay, and Princeton and Harvard and Stanford and UCLA, what have you, San Jose State. They won't come together and come up with a sound economic plan. What do you call that? That's treason. When you deliberately massacre your own citizens just for your ego, just for your satanic cults, it's treason against the United States of America. Okay? What I'm doing is free speech and logical critiques and criticisms of this country, which is being a better citizen than anyone else in this whole country. What they're doing is treason and mass murder and torturing people. There's 100,000 kids in the streets. Okay? That's an outrage. And somewhere like a fourth of them are right here in California. Little children in the streets. Some of them are completely by themselves. So why don't they build houses for the homeless? So I'll end this by saying this. Again, I tell you, that Donald Trump added $8.4 trillion to the debt. $8.4 trillion in a mere 4 years. But he won't print the check. He won't write the check for $100 billion to end homelessness. It'd be 8.5 instead of 8.4 trillion that he added to the debt. That's treason. He basically massacred every one of those homeless people that died of hypothermia by refusing to pass vice taxes to build rehabs. He's massacred those people who die of fentanyl and blues and cocaine and heroin and crack in the streets. He's massacred them. Because not to act is as much of an act as to act. And not to act in regards to those things is an act of mass murder. And I'll tell you, I've made thousands of videos where I tell people exactly what to do to solve these problems. Their blood is not on my hands, but their blood is on the hands of the administration right now. The blood is on the hands of the Republican administration. The blood is on the hands of the government. And the blood is on the hands of the masses of people in the United States of America who massacre their own people like the people in Gaza. And they're too busy, living their shallow lives to care. How many people must die? If there was 100 times as many people dying every day in this country, would you care then? 1,000? At what point do they care? If there was 1,000,000 times as many people dying every day in this country, would they then care? They don't care. The word care is a play on words for CR. You don't see that I'm Christ. You don't care that these people are dying in the streets. And I can't respect it.